Hello, welcome a decision about the connectivity and share on demand vehicles. We try to explain the influence in the mobility with the transformation or technology disruption. We are in the table people that work in private companies, in consultants, and the different countries. And we talk about the possibility of the use in the technology to change the patterns of the mobility. At the same time, we discuss about the new paradigm of mobility, like the name is Mobility as a Service, MaaS. There are the people involved. When just before each presentation, I try to set a little bit presentation of each person. For the answers, for the questions after the presentations, we have APP. Can you act with your smartphone? There on the screen, not? And at the same time, there are also the possibilities to send the questions to the table I received by iPad, and then we have more or less 15 minutes to resolve, to answer the different questions, okay? The first one person is Sami Sahala. Is correct? Thank you. He's from Finland, from Helsinki. He's a project manager of Smart Mobility and Forum Virium of Helsinki. We speak about the Mobility as a Service. Mobility as a Service, the fathers of the Mobility as a Service are in Finland, but the Mobility as a Service born in Finland. And for this question, they had the first one presentation today. Come on, sis.
All right, good afternoon, good morning it is. I'm Sami Sahala, coming from city of Helsinki. Yes, we have something to do with the hype behind the concept. I come from Forum Virium, which is a kind of in-house innovations agency or innovation unit of the city of Helsinki. So I work for the city in a sense. And you can also see there's a logo of a European project called SPICE that we are partners of, and looking at innovative procurement. So this is the topic what should cities do, how should they maybe procure to get MaaS in their city. So that's the topic of today. Yes, the big hot question is how you can imagine that we get a lot of questions from different cities that how can I get MaaS in my city? What should I do? How much should I invest? Where? How? What? There's one thing that you need to remember, that when people are talking about MaaS, mobility service, just ask again that what are they actually talking about? Because quite often it can be something like a new journey planner, it's MaaS, a new carpooling service, hey, it's a MaaS service. And it's fine, but actually what we wanted to really emphasize with the concept in the first place was that there's a new layer on top of the transport sector that provides access to transport. So to be honest, it's all this different kind of stuff. You come up every week, like every other day. Again, take another look. What is MaaS when you see people talking about MaaS? The new layer on top of it means that it's an access. It's kind of a resale, new sales channel for transport sector. MaaS is not replacing the existing transport. It provides better access to it. Just keep that in mind. That's always crucial to think about first before we even start to think about how to get one. I've been using this kind of value chain lately to show the yeah, it is a value chain actually, to show the kind of needed elements that you need to have in place to actually have MaaS in your city. Somewhere in the left there's infrastructure, policy, all that stuff. Somewhere on the right, the actual user, let's not forget them. But the building blocks themselves. Transport sector, they need to open up. There's the APIs, interfaces need to be there. So they need to be accessible by third parties, both data as well as reselling their service, even more important. If there's one thing that you need to do, make sure the accessibility is there. Then you need different kind of back office components from new kind of routing to customer information management, clearing, all that. But then we'll have Anton speaking after me to probe a little deeper into that. And then closer to the user, what I call aggregators, that's the service that brings your options together. What are the different available options for your travel in one place? That's the aggregating part. It may even have a single click to linking you to buy that ticket, maybe even buy the ticket right from there, but still, to me, that's aggregating. And when you go a little bit further, you come up with like a bit more comprehensive services that we use this analogy to telecom all the time. So what happened to telecom, what happened to mobile phones? Also the pricing mechanism changed. It used to be pay per every second you talked on the phone, and you'd get that bill at the end of the month. Well, it's been like 15, 20 years, it's all about prepaid or fixed price monthly packages. Why can't that work in transport? That was one of the main ideas behind MaaS in the first place. So, as a city, as a public sector, the only thing you know how to do is put out a public tender. No, then you need to figure out that what is it that we are actually trying to buy here. You can just put out a tender, hey, I will buy a MaaS. You have no idea what you're getting then. So you need to think of how you spend the money, where you spend the money. It can be the framework part, basically enabling MaaS in your city. It can look into the actual components that I was just showing, or it can be put your money towards the actual operator that provides the end user service. So that's the part that you need to really do a little bit of homework. Part of that homework is that you need to go through that value chain as I showed. There are a number of questions that does it make sense that public sector does this on their own, or should that be something for private sector? And I can't tell you what to do because every city is different, honestly. You need to figure out that by yourself. Another way to look at it is that we will have one private operator in the city having monopoly on MaaS system, or it could be a public transport providing that, or it could be that one that we favor in Finland, that there are multiple providers for MaaS in your city. Again, the analogy to the telecom sector. You wouldn't like that there was only one mobile operator in your country or in your city. The tendering part. This is something I stole from Copenhagen last spring. That was at the time they were looking at the possible tendering of MaaS in this way. 3 different versions. The one that is the fully private version. Cities just enabling that. Another thing is that another part is that city does the MaaS operating by themselves. Or the third version is that they focus on the middle part on the value chain. Let's invest in MaaS platform or do other stuff there. And when you think of, it should have actually some, well, it does have, yeah, sorry, just not seeing here the same picture here. But yeah, the access model means that you put money towards the transport sector. Tendering model puts the money here on the end user part or different that. There's another version that we've been trying to do in Finland. Not do any of that, rather put the money in the hand of the user. The idea is behind is that some kind of digital coupon to buy a mobility service. That means that there's all of a sudden there's a big new market forming, and if there's market, there's a demand, the market will follow, and there will be all these segments in the value chain without a city having to pay for it. So we put our money in the hands of the user. So alternative version to go ahead. So, where are we currently? We have a number of cities in Europe that have basically been doing MaaS for many years. But that's like, to me, that's an extension of public transport. With a smart card, you can maybe use even the private car sharing. That is MaaS. But then there are plenty of questions on that. Does it scale up? Does it provide interoperability going to the next city? The legislation is going to change. How will that work out? But still, it's perfectly good MaaS already. Another version is example I like to use is Vienna, and Anton will tell you more about that, where city and the public sector has been really investing in the middle part of the value chain. And then third part is more where what we've been doing is really focusing on on the right side of the on focusing the enabling part. I like to use the word enabler quite a lot, but that's actually what we do. So, as a summary, there is no one way of doing it. That's what I always tell everyone. But you need to do your homework. Think twice before putting out a public tender. Think twice, what is it that you're going to buy in that way? Make sure that there's no like, it's not an either-or choice. They can be hybrid models, but one thing that people, your citizens, really hate is that you create another monopoly. So keep the humans, keep the users in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our second speaker is Mr. Anton Fitzthum. He's from Austria, Vienna. Sami talked about the model of mobility as a service in Vienna. Anton is sales and business development. The Fluid Time Data Services is his company. He explained about the Fluid Hub. It's all in one cloud, based in the marketplace, and it's integrated for the different modes of transport. Okay?
So thanks a lot. Nice to be here. Okay, I think now it's working also. I really like the phrase of Sami Sahala in the beginning. MaaS is all about enabling access to different modes of transport. I think nowadays we have about 70% of the people just sitting in the car, not using any other modes of transport. And this is the one we should target. And I think MaaS is one option to go ahead in that direction. I think this is the main goal we should always have on a high level, to see how we can get people out of owning and using their own cars instead of just using the service when they really need it. So I think this is a rather good holistic view we should have on. So just would like to talk about what's going on currently about MaaS and the involvement and how, what we have learned so far. I think in the beginning it's always about understanding what's going on in the moment. We have urbanization, we have the issue of congestion, fine dust pollution, we have the issue of limited resources, both on space and on money when it comes to public authorities, city level. That's a big issue. And have a fast-growing opportunity or fast-growing number of transport service providers that are approaching the cities, approaching the areas. And on the other hand side, but we also have lots of opportunities we should think of. It's about political will. I think cities, authorities think different nowadays than they did 10 years before. It's about technology that's improving. And it's also about the changing mindset of the people to see the benefit also about using instead of owning things. So all the things are, I think, enabling vital opportunities, both for established companies who are in the market, public transport operators and so on, but also for new startups who are popping up, MaaS Global, Ubigo, and so on and so on. So lots of things are going on. Just one slide about Fluid Time. We're located in Vienna and we are acting as a technology provider to enabling MaaS services. And we're, for example, working on leading projects now in Stockholm and in Helsinki, where it's about the Ubigo project and it's about a project together with the city of Helsinki, but we can talk about that later on afterwards. First thing I would like to point out here is to understand the upcoming MaaS ecosystem. Starting with the transport service provider on the second place, I think what really is going on now, there's much more TSPs, transport service providers, approaching cities than it did happen 10 years before. Good example here is Vienna. 5 months ago, we just had one bike sharing company, and now we have 4 of them. just Mobike, O-Bike, and Donkey Republic just enter the market, and the city does not know how to deal with that. Should they promote it? Should they prevent it? Should they? How do you deal with that? And the same goes with scooter sharing, with car sharing. There's always this kind of startups or sometimes established companies just jump into the market, and the cities who has the control or needs to have ensure that there is control on mobility, as ensures a certain level of mobility in the city are, yeah, to some extent they're lost. And that's why there's the cities as the next big stakeholders here in the ecosystem, because their main ability, their main job is to ensure that transportation not just works today or is improved today, but it also works in 10, 15 years. All this issue with autonomous vehicles, of course, is something that frightens cities. And then it's about the mobility service providers. You can see on the right side, second on the right side. Of course, there are traditional ones like public transport, but more and more also private industry is jumping onto that. And these are, of course, the startups like Vim, UbiGo, and so on. But more and more we see also established companies jumping onto that. Automobile clubs, telecom operators, and so on. Those who have a quite huge customer base and have the potential to put people not just using their own service they have using it today, but also extend it with mobility. I think this is a good enabler for really changing the mindset of people, because people are really used to go with the car. They will not rely and use any public transport application. They're not used to that and will not do that. But if someone they are using on a daily basis the service and tells them, well, it might be good also to jump out of the car and just use the public transport for the last mile, they will most probably rely on that. So it's always a question how to tackle the end user. Okay, I think I need to push up a bit. The two major trends we see, first of all, is about optimization of the current fleet, which is the public transport mainly now working on to say, well, we have a quite static network at the moment, and it's not customer-driven, it's not customer-oriented. So we need to get rid of the static lines and make it more flexible. But there are lots of companies jumping out there and working on that. So it should be, and this is also kind of MaaS, or kind of MaaS development. And the other thing is about that the mobility service providers, or the mobility services are more and more often by third parties, not just the ones who are owning the transport service, but those who are kind of independent of that. So they just think about, okay, what does my users need best? Which kind of services they need? And then try to get agreements with those transport service providers and package them in a nice way. This is how we see it in the future. A good example, I mean, this was starting in Vienna, I think 2012, so it's already long time ago when you think about technology. But there the approach was actually to integrate as much as possible in the area of Vienna and provide it as a service. I think it worked out quite well, but also the main learning about that is that a user cannot handle all of the services by one application. I think it's much too complicated for a user. So it needs to have a much more focused approach, which was one of the key learnings, I would say, from the SMILE project established in Vienna. So when you compare it now with the UbiGo approach, you see that just the number of transport services that are integrated and packaged to the end user is much smaller. It's much more easy to follow what's actually going on and what is available to my usage. And the approach with UbiGo is also about to package things. It's about to, similar to your mobile phone subscription, is about having not just the minutes and data volumes and gigabytes. You have minutes or hours of car sharing, car rental, and days on public transport. And this is going to be introduced in March in Stockholm this year, based on the fluid time technology. Just shortly about what we are offering, actually, is this three-layered approach, starting with the generic layer on Fluid Hub, which is dealing as a cloud-based solution and offered as a service to the cities, to the stakeholders that are using it. And based on that, on top of that, there are the business logic and the Fluid Go application. So it's all about trying to standardize and make some kind of scalable layer on the bottom, integrate the different modes of transport, and then it depends on what is actually the role of the service provider we're talking about. Is it someone who is established in the market, who has a clearinghouse, who has his customer database, that doesn't need anything more from our stack, he has everything in place itself? Or it's someone like starting from scratch, then he needs the whole holistic chain, which is the business logic, which is about telling about clearing, about the payment, and so on. And on top, you can find a white label application. But also that should be oriented to who is actually the end user, who is the service provider, and eventually there's something in place that works even better. So always have in mind that it should be focused on the end user needs. And that actually brings me already to the end, to the final conclusion I'd like to point out here. Whatever you start thinking of MaaS to establish a service in your area, in your country, in your city, consider the whole local ecosystem. So who are the stakeholders who are involved and can be affected by a MaaS service? And we were quite surprised about who, and actually who potentially is thinking of getting a MaaS service provider on top. Even those we didn't even make a deep analysis last year, we didn't see that that variety is going in that direction already at that point of time. It's about promoting and including the users from the beginning when you design and set up a service. And you also should not forget to also to keep a close contact with the public authority, or if you have a public authority driving that, that should also be an option for you to be part of that. So what we see is a collaborative approach to give also access to the city of this kind of fluid hub access, and to see also this, that's also important for the city to see what actually is going on, where are people requesting from going from A to B, and ideally what we see is not just one mobile service provider in one city, but there are a variety of them, so it's not a monopoly. And the city have to control and see what's going on all of these service providers and see, and based on that can react on their planning, on their strategy and so on. And in the end, it's also about, as it is a low margin business, it's not a high volume and high margin business. You need to find a slight and a quite effective, cost-effective way how you can introduce and go ahead. And that's why we now offering also the cloud-based and service approach solution to really start with a right low service barrier and just to kick it off and see how it goes and try out and see how it goes. And if you're happy, then the business will grow. And this is what we see as the impact and how we'd like to push also the MaaS market with our solution. So thanks a lot, quite perfect on timing. And any further questions, then just feel free. Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you, Anton. It's a punctuality of Austria. The first one speaker is Mr. José Antonio López Becerra. He's a formation engineer. Now he's the Director of Technology and Systems of SABA, S-A-B-A. He's a private company charged of a lot of parkings and logistics policies, etc. And Mr. López Becerra explained about the experience on smart mobility and experience also in public-private partnership. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to this presentation. As Manel has explained, I'm trying to share with you two real experiences with the concepts that Sami has explained before, and using the public infrastructure, okay? So, first of all, let me show you who we are. So, we are a private company, as Manel explained before, focused on public infrastructure, car parks, mainly car parks, on-street and off-street. We operate today in 5 countries. Andorra is up there, so it's the 5th one. It's a small one, but it's there. And this is the figures, just to make you an idea of how many countries and spaces we work with. But let me go directly to how we foresee this kind of infrastructures, car parks, in big cities, medium and big cities. So first of all, it's much more than a private car use. So there are other uses for the car parks. We make it a concept as a service hub. So it can be used for example, electric vehicles, public or private, of course. We also foresee that it kind of spaces can be used for other public transportation modes, like examples that have been explained before, like car sharing, biking, and carpooling, for sure, using the intermodality approach. So you can exchange from one transportation to another outside of the streets, which is complex to handle on street, this kind of combination. So you can use this kind of public infrastructure to use, leave your car and take a bicycle and then come back or rent a car or whatever. Of course, there are new services and new challenges in cities, like the e-commerce. Delivery of e-commerce purchases is complex. All of us want the delivery between 9 and 10 in the afternoon, so there are not capacity for logistics company to do that. And within that, how you can pick your purchases has to be done in a controlled environment with security and depending on what have you purchased for sure. And this kind of infrastructure are useful for that. Also for the last mile distribution for the small stores using electric vehicles and last mile distribution. And also storerooms. City centers do not have open spaces for these kind of requirements, and they have to move outside the cities to bring their goods where are not possible to store at home. So this is another option that we think we can help and contribute to the city. And of course, all of this requires technology. Okay? There are many technologies. We have mentioned some of them here. And afterward, I will share with you one of them at the end of the presentation. So let's first of all, let's see one new phase of a car park and how it works today.
SABA, buenos días.
Okay, this is a real example. It's not fake, so it's working. In fact, this is a Barcelona car park. So this is how we foresee the near-term future. Let me show in a couple of minutes two real experiences. One of them is here in Barcelona. We have a PPP cooperation with the city of Barcelona. We run most of city center public car parks. And there we have deployed all of our capabilities of technology and new services, like you mentioned before, with QR codes, RFID, and so on. And so we can use different services for different kind of customers. We have here some figures on these OBEs, the device that is used for toll highways, those RF devices. So you enter and leave the car park without taking any ticket, and so it's everything is automatic. We also have here an experience with a well-known shopping center in Spain, El Corte Inglés. So they use their own solutions for giving for free the car park, so the customer do not have to interact with the car park, just to do it directly through the base stations that they have there in their own shopping center. This is one of this example. The other one I'd like also to share with you is Perugia. Perugia is a city in the middle west of Italy. It's a medium city. There we have a very interesting experience that we have, again, a PPP partnership with Perugia city there. And in this case, we handle, in cooperation with the city, 100% of the car spaces on street and off street in that city. There, the approach is much more aggressive, so we will install there, first quarter of next year, all kind of sensors, RF readers, and so on. And all of this will be available for the city for their policies towards mobility. Okay, that's another very interesting experience that we can share with you, or any of you who are interested, beginning of next year. Very nice city, very old city, so it's a very interesting place for tourists. And just my last part of the presentation is today we are presenting for the first time a new platform for giving all of our information, like experiences that were explained before, as an open data. So we have a lot of information that can contribute to reduce and solve these common problems that all of big cities are facing. And this is 2 years ago, where we were also here in this same venue, explaining how we can help with this kind of problem. So today, we are present this platform who in fact tries to share all the information that we collect in our business, on street, off street, not only for, let's say, find a free space, which is quite common, it's available in many places, but we also put available where is exactly the place, which is the size of the place, if you have a big car or a smaller car, if you want to have a plug available, or you park on the street, if it's possible to arrive there, or you need to have any kind of agreement with the city. And emissions on and off street, so NO2, CO2, so all of this information is actually collected by a company like us, but it's used only internally. What we're doing here is put it available to many kinds of different users. For example, aggregators, like you mentioned before, automotive, it's a very intense experiences there. They want to use their navigators to bring you directly to the best place for your car. If you have a big car, like I mentioned before, you cannot park in a small place. So afterwards, you just turn and turn and turn around and just contribute to pollution. Public administration for public policy, for sure, and also for security forces. Nowadays, this is, again, a very complicated situation in these terms. All of this will be done in an open platform, and we collect by ourselves, and we put it just in an open platform, so for this kind of customers. The idea here is to help to reduce these problems in terms of mobility, using also the information that generates the mobility itself. That's the point here. So I hope that you can use also our own information, so if you want. So if you have any other questions, so I'm available afterwards to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, José Antonio. The next one speaker is Mr. Alfonso Díaz del Río from Ferrovial. Ferrovial is a construction and services company in Spain and all the world. Yes, yes, across the world. And we talk about the new urban mobility culture and the on-demand and shared services. Okay, come on.
Thank you, Manel. So, good morning, everybody. So, I'll try to start by seeing the real pains that the city has and how those pains affect the mobility. Then I'll try to jump on the different trends and the new business models that are evolving from those pains and those trends. And I'll try to close it with how everything should work together, how everything should be connected, how all these different solutions have to work together, complementing the public transport in order to, at the end, make what the cities need. It's that their citizens can find the right way to, or the better way to be transported at any time. So I'll start by using a sentence that probably has been heard in this Congress for 1,000 times already, but I think it's the key for the problem that the cities have, no? And it's how in 2050 probably 2/3 of the world's population will be living on cities, no? And this will create pains, urban mobility pains that have to be solved, no? For example, we have the part of the energy, no? How 60% of the energy used in a city is used for operating buildings and for transportation. Or how do we have the oversized automobiles? At the end, the cars are manufactured for 100 miles per hour, but in cities you are not able to drive them so fast. I mean, maybe at 20 miles per hour, if so. Also, they are parked more than 90% of their life. No? And more importantly, they mainly do trips with seats empty. No? And the last part of it is how much fuel do we waste on trying to find parking. So all this, at the end, implies that we have an inefficient mobility model, and we need to solve it, and there are different ways or things to approach it. So, as I said, going a little bit on the trends that we're seeing, I mean, we have different trends that individually can solve different problems. I mean, from a trend, a business solution may evolve, but what we need to try to do is to combine the different trends, the different business models that arise from those trends, and really solve a global problem more than an individual pain. So if I look at the green economy, for example, and the zero emissions that it's nowadays so popular, with the electric vehicles, a new business model is arising. Behind it, all the electric charging, like the Tesla superchargers or the Ionity collaboration that the European OEMs are trying to establish a fast charging network in Europe. But it's an individual problem. If I look on the Internet of Things or the connected roads or connected parkings, as José has just explained, new solutions for the parkings can be offered. If I look at the sharing culture, how many new businesses are arising from there? The car sharing, ride sharing, carpooling. Also, for sure, the digitalization, the trend. I mean, the mobility as a service that Anton and Sami have explained. I mean, it's here already. It's clear, and for sure the autonomous transport. So I think all of them have to be combined and trying to get mobility as a shared, connected, and on-demand service. So now, focusing a little bit more on the shared mobility and connected mobility, that is what I am going to be talking more. We'll see that that the proper sharing economy and the digital culture are already impacting or have already impacted the mobility ecosystem, and new business models are arising. Going from the mobility as a service, that would be, I would say, the farthest one, to bike sharing systems, new bike sharing systems like the Mobike, car sharing systems like City or Car2Go, or the more known Uber or Lyft. So at the end, we believe, or I believe, that the public transport has to be the key, has to be the cornerstone for everything, and everything else will complement it. At the end, what we need is to offer multiple choices, all of them connected, so that the user can go where he needs and cover his transportation needs at any time. Sometimes you may be lucky, and going from home to your office, you may have a bus stop in front of you and a bus stop in front of your office, but other times you won't be so lucky, and you may need to walk or ride a bike for a few meters to get to the bus station, then jump into the bus, walk a little bit more to your office, or maybe at the afternoon, you want to go to a soccer game, or you want to go shopping. You may use the bike to go there, but you cannot use the bike to come back because you have your shopping bags, so you may use a car sharing. So at the end is leaning on the public transport, offering different and multiple choices, and all of them connected in order to solve the different transportation needs. Just going a little bit more in detail on shared mobility and how companies are evolving or diversifying towards it, and towards trying to diversify from their business as usual and ramping into these new business models, and all of them have a motivation behind it and different strategies. You have the OEMs that may be doing a defensive strategy where they are trying to find new channels for sales. You have the rental car companies that are probably digitalizing their business or evolutionizing it to a more customer-friendly, where instead of having to rent 24 hours, you can rent by the hour or even by the minute. We have the services companies that at the end are trying to give other services to their cities, or even the energy companies maybe trying to look for a cleaner image. So at the end, these different strategies, as I said, are for different companies. And what's Ferrovial's strategy? What are we doing, and how are we doing it? Well, I think what we are trying is to promote mobility solutions based on these new trends identified before, and always looking for alliances or partnerships with key and leader companies, in order to provide the cities and the citizens an added value solution. That is, at the end, the term that 1 + 1 gives us more than 2. So for that, I have brought here a couple of examples of 2 projects that we are working on now. The first one will be City, that is the car sharing system for Madrid that we will be launching in December. in partner with Renault. Renault, as you all know, it's one of the leaders in the electric vehicle sales, and also it has one of the most convenient vehicles in terms of autonomy and size. So this will give us the possibility to offer bigger coverage area, longer trips, and also make our operations more efficient. And the last project I wanted to bring today was the strategic alliance that we've made with PBSC. PBSC is a Canadian bike sharing company that has a booth here. And this alliance has allowed us to tender the bike sharing system for Barcelona, what is called the BCN 2.0, which at the end it's a system that has 7,000 bikes, where 1,000 of them are electric bikes, and the other 6,000 that are mechanics are already pre-wired and prepared to just hook up a battery and make them electric. No? So I think the city and the solution has think about how to solve the problem. No? If you ask anybody from Barcelona, probably using the BCN today, they will say that it's a great service, but doesn't cover all their needs, because a lot of people live in the high part of Barcelona. They use it to come down to the center, but they cannot come back. You know? So it's not fulfilling the full service. With these electric bikes, I think the city has made a good choice to be able to go back to there. So I think, that's all I wanted to explain today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the last, but not the last speaker is Mr. Paul Crucho, is the President and Chief Executive Officer from Ann Arbor Park. Ann Arbor is a city of Michigan State. Huh?
Yes.
In the United States.
Correct.
Okay. His speech is about the reflection of all that said before, and put in question some targets, some objectives, etc. I think it's interesting reflection, and then we try to debate inside the table and with all the public. Please send the questions to the APP, okay? Thank you. Come on.
Good afternoon. So who is this guy? I'm not a technologist. I don't represent a company. I am the leader of a public-private partnership of a community, an area of innovation in the United States. It's located 60 kilometers west of Detroit and is centered around a major university and is a hub of innovative technologies. And this is a little commercial. It's all there. But what I wanted to share with you is the perspective of someone who is going to be a user, a community as a user of mobility as a service, and what I would argue communities should do first and early before they begin to acquire technologies and implement solutions. So my first point is, having attended many conferences around connected and autonomous vehicles, those technologists often tell you what their technology can do and how they can do it. And in fact, that's what most of the displays in the exhibit hall are doing. They're telling you what they can do and how they can do it. But a key point for all of us, I think, is what should the technologies be doing in our communities? And I would argue that we need to take a look at what core values we're trying to create in our communities before we engage with these individual companies on solutions. So for me and my community, these core values are equity. How well do these systems provide the benefits to all the citizens in our community, those with means and those without? How accessible it is. Are there particular parts of the community that have challenges for their citizens to access services, jobs, housing, and things, and how sustainable of a system is. And I don't mean just sustainable from the environmental perspective, but sustainable in terms of an operating model that can go forward in the future and potentially not be a burden on the city in terms of subsidization. So what we're looking at in my setting and in the United States is that the system needs to be that you engage in developing for your community to be open source, so that you can utilize a number of different approaches and not get locked in to a particular approach that may get outdated. And what I'm suggesting to you is that having had 10 years leading the development program in San Jose, California, in Silicon Valley, what I do know about technology is what we think is working today is going to be completely different 6 to 12 months from now. So a plug-and-play model is very, very important. How accessible is the system to new and different kinds of technologies? And again, I'm arguing that you need to work first from your users as opposed to top down in terms of either what the company is selling or what a national policy might be. And I would argue that where we are at this point is the notion that we need to be focusing on the operating system for city regions. And I would further argue, just like smartphones, what we are seeing outside this room in the exhibit hall is a battle. This is a battle between major technology companies to be the 1 or 2 or 3 left in terms of disruption that will dominate the operating system environment, much like Apple and Android dominate the cell phone market. So point 2, I think what we're all going to be coming to at a certain point, and it was already mentioned in the presentation, is an offering of a white labeled system in which you, in your cities and region, will then layer over a regional skin that will create a trusting environment for your citizenry. Honestly, you know, if we were bringing most citizens in here and we showed them the big name companies here, their level of trust might not be very high, but it will be very high with the local government, with the local community in terms of adopting. I should share with you, we're doing a lot of work in connected and autonomous vehicles. In the United States, 65% of the populace says that they don't want to get into an autonomous vehicle. So that means that trust in developing this system is going to be very, very important, and who the citizenry trusts is going to also be very important. My last point, and we'll give back my time, is that this implementation of what we're seeing in terms of my colleagues on the panel, what we're seeing outside this room, is very disruptive. And that seems like, you know, sure, that's right, that's a given. But you need to think of it in the context, if you're selling to cities your services, what impact what you're selling has on the existing revenue stream for the city. In my own case, I heard from local officials about a worry that so much of their budget is coming from parking resources, parking payments. Why would we want to change that system to provide more mobility? Those are the kinds of things that you need to overcome in thinking through the convincing municipalities and regions to utilize these new technologies. So I thank you for listening. I'm going to give back my time so that we have a full question period.
Okay, thank you very much. Other questions in the table? The tablet? No? No. Other questions in the table? I have one question about MaaS. What is, in your opinion, about the role of the public sector in the MaaS platform? Will be the leader? Is possible the public partnership? The other microphone? Another one is more or less the same. In the same area, is possible to provide different services providers? What is the leader? What is the solution? And finally, what is the business model?
Yeah, my standard answer is to ask back that what you mean by MaaS platform, because that can mean so many different things. But again, there's I can't tell you that there's one way of doing it in for example, your city. It depends on so many things. But of course, our favorite is that cities should be an enabler. The innovation in new services doesn't really come from public sector. It comes from startups, SMEs, students. Let them develop the new services and let us help them. That's our reasoning there.
Maybe just one to add. I think it's also quite important to separate a platform or one of the platforms to the end user service. I think this is key.
Okay.
Because you should not just target the end user with one service and that's the only service, because there might be quite innovative and quite creative ideas how to attach them.
I would just underscore what I said. I think that the public sector's role is to ensure that community values are taken into account as the system is developed, in terms of equity, in terms of other things like that.
But you agree in this context, the public sector needs a new model of governance?
Yes.
Or the same, or the former model of governance, the conventional model of governance is applied?
Not sure if it's about governance. It is about public sector having to learn to cooperate and collaborate much better. They can't do everything by themselves anymore. It is about kind of networked business model, if you can call it business model.
And the Spanish people have Villian?
Well,
Yes.
more than an opinion, I'd like to trying to get the last question that you asked. What would be the business model? I mean, at the end, most of us are private companies, and we're looking for a profit. And at the end, what's the business model behind MaaS? Who is going to end up paying for it? Is it more the final user? Is it more the operator, the service provider? I mean, do you have an idea of how that's going?
Yeah, well, there are multiple different versions out there. It can be public sector doing it by themselves, so it's public service. It can be fully market-driven. It can be a hybrid in between, where public sector invests in it, but at the same time they kind of maybe creates and then provides a platform, and then the private sector, even SMEs, startups can produce the end user services on top of it. So different models out there.
Okay, there's 7 questions from the public. There are 4 anonymous and 3 with name. Start with, we have only more or less one minute for each question. No, start with the questions that have name. Anders Lambert asked to SABA, a lot of countries want cars out of the cities. How can cities utilize all car parks in this scenario?
Can you repeat it, please?
Yes.
Can
For you, it's for you.
No, can you repeat the question?
Good. A lot of countries want cars out of the cities. How can cities utilize all car parks in this scenario?
Yeah, well, in fact, I mentioned some
Yes,
approaches
yes.
on this. Of course, cars will be there. Maybe less cars, but it's difficult to be 100% of carless cities, at least in midterm. But these spaces, the big spaces in big cities, can be used for many other uses, like I mentioned before. So, I mean, e-commerce for me, in my personal opinion, is a very interesting service. So, you have a lot of facilities for purchase in many web pages and aggregators. But at the end, when you have to get the good, at the end you need some logistic. So you can do it by yourself, would be probably decrease the cost of the purchase, or you can wait for someone to bring it to you, which is more cars, more trucks around the city. So I think that's a very good approach for this kind of infrastructure. For sure, there are other, our colleague from Ferrowal mentioned electric bicycles. So electric bicycles require plugs for charge the batteries. So again, car parks, and we have here in Barcelona also experiences on that. Car parks, there are spaces where you can use outside the city with a more security environment, plug connectors for bicycles. And because it's electric, you can go up and down the ramps without problems compared to the human track bicycles. That's 2 good examples.
Okay. José Piqué, I think he's not the former minister, but asked to Paul, what innovation strategies has USA for developing platforms for testing connected and self-driving cars? A little bit Tej, because this is a long.
Oh.
Testing cars.
Yes, I think what you're seeing across many nation states, and then in the United States, multiple locations, is the need to create specific test environments to validate that the technologies actually work. So in response to what we just heard, we're building an environment that's 500 hectares in which we can show the life of an autonomous vehicle as it goes from the home, parks itself in your parking garage, perhaps loads a package, and then goes and fuels itself and returns to another location. So these kind of testing environments are being built in Sweden, they're being built in Spain, the Netherlands, the UK, Germany, are very important for the public to understand and accept and see how these new technologies work. My earlier point was that in a room of technologists, we all think this is going to work and it's going to be great and the public should accept it. But there is going to be a transition period where we need to demonstrate how this will work before it's fully adopted and accepted.
Can I add a little on that? Because
Yes.
exactly same idea. The technical testing is one thing. You can build test tracks. You can do that technical testing on normal traffic. But then it's more about the user acceptance. How do people behave with them, around them? What is the benefits that you can get? What is the impact towards city planning, all that? That's a whole another part of the testing, and then it's more like a living lab part of that, and that's what we are keen on doing.
Yeah, and I think that what you might be seeing in this room out here is a number of communities that want to be the living lab, and that gives them a competitive advantage.
Like Helsinki.
Yeah.
Larry asked, I think as all the speakers, one question. Is there a risk in political level that we stop developing our public transport infrastructure when we turn our attention to MaaS and new modes of transport? In my opinion, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
But the second answer is why?
Yeah.
And at the same time, there are also opportunities, I think.
Yeah. But there's lots of questions on that. What is
Yes,
the impact
yes.
of MaaS? What is the impact of autonomous vehicles? What is the impact towards, especially city planning infrastructure? I think nobody has that crystal ball to actually answer that. It's the same as facing internet or mobile phones. You can maybe say that what is the roadmap for technology, but you can't really predict that how will people behave, how will people use that new technology. So your guess is as good as mine. I always answer that especially to city planners and architects, just try to be as flexible as you can.
The last one with name, Iñaki. Has procurement have to be faster and able to take more risk to cope with the citizen expectations? It's more or less similar, yes?
Yeah, it helps.
Okay, and the first one, Anonymous, is for Sami. You have the microphone, it's perfect. Sami, is the existing technology enough to develop MaaS property in Spain?
Yes, MaaS is not about technology at all. Technology is not an issue with MaaS at all. It's all about mindset, basically. It's getting all the stakeholders on board, getting public sector to change their mind a little bit. Technology allows everything already. It's not an issue.
Another Anonymous, resources come from parking, perfect. So, is it a good idea that downtown's parkings are private? This is not for this table, but...
Well, I mean, just because
you answered is yes.
parking,
You answered is yes, I suppose.
I mean, behind all of this, there's a business model. Or how you can finance all of this is a question here. And there are many models, as Sami mentioned before. Our idea is that you use private companies, you get the profit of, I would say, more result-oriented company for sure, but also how you can reinvest quickly the money that you get from the city and from those who really use infrastructure. So who use the public transportation, nobody doubts that you have to pay for the public transportation. So if you use private car, sometimes there are doubts. Well, you have to pay for private cars parking. So I did the same discussion. So it's how you finance all of these business models, and I think there's space for all of them. So it depends on the city policy and how they foresee the near term and how it affects all the city business. Because if you take transportation from city center, then stores, restaurants, and so on, at the end dies is quite easily if you don't find another solution for the same transport requirement.
We have, if it's possible, 2 minutes more. Yes, we'll try. No, so this, no, only one. No, it's, I decided one. Daniel is the last one, to SABA. How is shared mobility and electric vehicles benefits affecting the car parking business?
I would say positive.
Yes.
And at the end,
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Sorry.
No. The answer is yes.
Why?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why?
Yes, you need to move through the city. So we think that you have to switch the petrol cars into electric cars. So, but you still requires mobility. Then we're gonna start talking about its private, public, share, commute. I mean, there are many models, but we think that those cars, no matter if it's private or public, the worst place to live there is on street, because it blocks the transport mode, even if it's public. It also takes time to park, so it's even it's an automatic car that parks, it also takes time to park. So every time you have block lane for park, you need to move all the cars to the next lane. So I think that many cities has decided, even like here in Spain or Barcelona, to take slowly on-street car park and move to the off-street. With at the end, it's public again, so we don't own the car parks. So it's how the public policy decides to move the cars, public or private cars, around the city. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for your attention. My job was very, very, very easy with these wonderful partners on the table. See you. Be happy. The Congress continue. Goodbye.